afternoon. It's great to be here, and I promise not to say the word culture one time, even though I'm supposed to talk about culture. After an introduction like that, I think I need to really set you all straight. It's true I'm speaking before you, but I don't consider myself a speaker. And it's true I have written some books, but I don't consider myself an author. When it comes down to it, I'm an equipment salesman. And I tell you that for a specific reason. If I mess this up, I'm an equipment salesman. What do you expect? Maybe you could cut me a break. I don't know. But if you hear something that touches you or something that moves you, then you would have to know that it came from the Lord, because how could it have come from a equipment salesman? Speaking of equipment sales, numerous years ago, I closed the biggest deal in the history of our company. I don't know if it's still the biggest deal. It probably is, at least for me, I'm gonna say it is. But this deal was so big at the time that I think it almost doubled the revenues from the prior year. And I was so proud of this deal and so excited about it. And I was about to go into my dad's office, my dad founded our company, and tell him about this huge deal that I had closed, but I took a moment to reflect before I did that. I started thinking about my time at the company. You see, when I graduated from college, I didn't have a job, and my dad needed employees. And I needed a job when I graduated from college, so it seemed like a natural fit. I went to work at our company, and I was doing the job that is so famously known as the gopher. You know, go for this, go for that, go deliver parts over here, go do that. But the thing is, I loved that job. That job was so incredible because I could take it, like if I had to take a 30-minute drive, I could listen to music. I could take an hour to do it. I could just hang out and have a good time and get paid for it and do things like that. Another job I loved was back in the day, we had filing cabinets. Does anybody in here remember filing cabinets? I was talking to the kids at Liberty the other day, and they were like, what is that? But I used to actually take the paper invoices, put them in envelopes and file them alphabetically. And the reason I love that job is because I could do it right when the equipment technicians were taking their break. And they didn't know I was in the room next to them acting like I was at work, and I was listening to their stories. And it was so entertaining, and I got paid to listen to these technicians talk about whatever. No, you know, I don't know if you've heard a group of technicians talk, but they can tell some whopper stories, and it was so fun. But one day they were talking stories that weren't really entertaining me, because what they were doing is they were talking about me. And they were saying stuff like, what a loser. That kid will never amount to anything. He wouldn't even have a job here if his dad didn't own the place. It kind of hit me. These guys are saying all this stuff about me. Why are they doing that? And the fact of the matter was, they had every right to be saying that about me, because they were just reporting back on what they had seen since I came to work at the company. So I don't know, I'm not gonna tell you it's the right type of motivation. I'm not gonna tell you I'm recommending this to anyone. But that day I got motivated for the very first time to do a good job at our company. I said in my mind, I said, I'm gonna show those guys. One day those guys in that room are gonna say, he did his job better than his dad who founded the place. So that's what brings me to this biggest deal in the history of our company. My day had come. I was gonna go into my dad and tell him about it. And I walked in and I go, Dad, I got the deal. And he goes, how much of it, son? I said, 100%. We shut out the competition, got every single machine. He goes, wow, that's amazing. He shook my hand. And you know what I did? Instead of saying thank you, I said, what's the biggest deal you ever closed, Dad? And you know how a dad can look at a son and he doesn't have to say a word, but basically his face is saying, you are the biggest idiot. He was giving me that look. And I'm like, how could he be giving me this look? Because I just closed the biggest deal ever. He's never had a deal like this. There's no way he can come back with a deal bigger than this. This is my day. And then I thought for a moment, and he goes, son, I don't know that there's any deal that stands out in my mind. But what I'd say is what I'm proudest of is this company has provided for so many employees and their families for so many years. And I'm just thankful that God's allowed me to play a small part in that. What? Why did he have to do that? This is my coming out. This is the realization of my vision from years ago. This is when those guys were gonna say, he's better than his dad. Well, not really. So I crawled out of his office that day, and you'd have thought I'd have learned a lesson. My dad was trying to teach me about leadership. It's not about us, it's about them. But I went on, and as she said in the introduction, I started working. I continued to work hard in the company. I became the sales manager, the general manager, eventually the majority shareholder. And in that time, the company grew from here to here. And I was just so excited about what I was doing in business. And one day I was sitting in church, and my wife, who's a singer, got up to sing. And it wasn't an audible voice, but I just felt the Lord saying, she's using her gifts and her talents to glorify me. What are you doing? I was like, Lord, you've heard me sing. You don't want me up there. I mean, I don't know what you're trying to say to me, but you don't want me up there. Then my pastor got up, and he started to preach a sermon, and it was that same thought. Here's a man using his gifts and his talents and his abilities to glorify me. But what are you doing? And I remember sitting there and thinking back to my dad's lesson many years ago about what he taught me. And I'm like, well, you know what I'm doing? I'm like providing businesses that, Lord, they provide for families, and they have for many years, and that's what I'm doing, as though I could appease God with something my dad tried to teach me with years ago. Well, it didn't go away, thankfully. The Lord never gives up on us. A few months later, I'm meeting with a mentor of mine, learning about how can I grow the business even more? What can I do that'll bring us even greater sales growth, greater experiences? And I just don't know why I said it, but I go, you know, one thing that's bothering me is there's this thing about I'm not really involved in my church, and that's been on my mind lately, and I don't really understand why. And another light bulb moment, she said, well, Kris, I think God likes to use us where he gives us the greatest level of influence. And for you, that may not be in your church. For you, that's probably in the business that he's given you. And instead of taking that great nugget and learning from it, here's what goes through my mind. How many job sites has she been on? I mean, a construction site? You're gonna try to honor and glorify God on a construction site? Are you kidding me? They're not singing hymns and praising the Lord on these construction sites. Not one bit. What is she thinking? 2 months later, I'm at a golf tournament with guys that do what I do, and I won that day. And we were sitting around having dinner, and I am bragging. My business has grown more than yours, and blah, blah. You know, one of those times when you're just all kind of going, who's the best in the room? And I'm just on top of the world, and it's when it happened. And this one really did get my attention finally. And it came from a really strange source. As we were eating, I was noticing this busboy who would come and clean the tables when people would get up and leave. And you could tell this busboy had physical limitations, mental limitations, I'm sure, but he had so much enthusiasm, and he did his job so well. I mean, I could not stop watching him. I loved watching this busboy clean the table. And I'm not kidding, by the end of the night, it was clear I wasn't the only one watching him, because by the end of the night when this busboy would clear tables, everyone in the restaurant would applaud. Have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, I've seen the world's greatest busboy, and it changed my life because I could not get him out of my mind. I'm trying to go to bed that night, and I can't get the world's greatest busboy out of my mind, and I'm thinking, that's what I want to do. I want to do my job so well, and I want my company to do its job so well that when we sell a machine, not only do they write us a check, but they'd actually stand back and clap for us for the job we did. That's what it would be to stand out, to shine in a way that others would notice us and just applaud us for our efforts. And I'm like, man, this is so cool. That's what we want to be. We want to be a company that shines, that stands out, and people actually clap for us when we do our job so well. It didn't help me go to sleep. And just as I was about to go to sleep, again, I don't say I hear God's voice, but it was just a feeling. It was like, there's a Bible verse. And I'm like, what? There's a Bible verse about that word. Shine? A Bible verse about that word. And I got up, I was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I stumbled around, and they had been there. The Gideons of America had left a Bible in a Myrtle Beach hotel room just for me. And I fumbled through it, eventually found it. Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine before men that they'll see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Now, I grew up in church, and I heard that verse a whole bunch of times, but let me tell you something. that night in a Myrtle Beach hotel room, I heard that verse for the very first time. Because what that verse really says is that we as believers are indeed called to stand out. We're indeed called to stand out in a way that others take notice. But not that they take notice of us and applaud us for the work we do, but that they take notice and applaud our Father in heaven for the works he does in and through us. That's what that verse is all about. So I went back to my company, and by this time I am so fired up. I brought our whole management team together. I go, guys, on my Myrtle Beach golf trip, I got a vision from God, and they looked at me like, what did you do on your golf trip, man? And I go, no, seriously, we're gonna shine with excellence. That's gonna be our company's new vision. We're gonna shine in a way, we're gonna stand out, and I was so excited, and they just kept looking at me like, oh, okay. Well, what does that look like? And I'm like, I have no idea. Read your Bible. It's right there, Matthew 5:16. That's going to be us. And you know what? I felt so good about it that I even put our value statement that we had on the walls of our building, I took and I put our vision, Matthew 5:16, shine with excellence, and we hung it on the walls, and it did absolutely nothing. But like I said, the Lord continues to work. It's so awesome that he continues to work on us. And over time, I began to really study Scripture, pray, and just eventually, he gave me kind of a concept for taking that word shine. And it all came from, what if Jesus came to work in our company? What would he be doing? That was my mindset. And I studied the Bible and prayed about it and, looked at all different things. And what I came up with was an acronym that became our company's vision statement. It was something that if we would follow these principles, then we felt like everything else would take care of itself. We felt like if we followed these principles, we would develop, and I'm gonna say it one time, the type of culture that others would feel good about being in and being a part of. So let me break that down for you real quickly, what those principles are. First of all, if Jesus came to work at our company, I'm pretty sure he'd be serving others. I mean, the Bible says the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. Everything we know about Jesus is how he came to serve humanity, how he came to set us free. If Jesus came to work in our organizations, he'd be serving others. Now, here's the key to things. That's no big light bulb in business, isn't it? Is it? Because businesses serve all the time. We've served 1 billion. Our service sets us apart, But why do they serve? Do they serve so they can sell more stuff? Or do they serve because they're called to serve? Jesus served so that he could serve you and I. It's the whole motivation thing. It's the whole mission thing. So can we have, as an organization, a mission that serves others so that we can help others, not so that we can get more for ourselves? The next principle is to honor God. The Son of Man came to do the work of him who sent him. How many times did he say that? I'm here to do the work of him who sent me. I'm here to honor my Father. He prayed to his Father all the time. Now here, in this one, I like to talk about a parable, because there's a parable that makes so much sense here. There's a parable in Luke, I believe, called the rich fool. And I think most of you in this room have probably heard that parable. It's about a guy whose crops were plentiful and things were going great. And he took those crops and he built bigger barns and he had big parties and he brought his friends over and they celebrated this guy's success. And they were just there to honor him for his outstanding success. That's who I was when I was trying to prove to people I was better than my dad. That's who I was when I was bragging to those guys in Myrtle Beach that my business was doing better than those. Everything about the business at that time was about honoring me, not about honoring God. And if we really want to work in a way that others would see the light of Christ in us, we should not be working to honor ourselves. We should be working why? To honor and glorify him. In order to do that, it takes a stewardship perspective that God gives us our lives and they're his. And we're just supposed to be good stewards of them. If we own businesses, God gives us a business to steward for his glory. And we don't do it to honor ourselves. We do it to honor and glorify him. The eye and shine is to improve continually. The parable of the talents was spoken about earlier, about God gives us gifts and talents and abilities, and he wants us to grow those. He wants us to make investment in those, to make them better. And each one of us in this room has different gifts, talents, and abilities. Yours are different than mine, hers are different than his. God gives us all unique talents and abilities, but he wants us to grow them, and he wants us to make them more, and he wants us to do that, not for ourselves, but for his glory. Imagine taking your gifts and talents and abilities and pouring everything you can into learning and becoming better at the things God's gifted you to do so that you can give him glory. Isn't that really what it's all about? I mean, he put us here on earth and he gave us these talents, and he wants us to learn and grow so that we become more like Jesus, so that he can take us to heaven and live with him forever, and we'll be prepared for that. Shouldn't we be taking the gifts and talents and abilities that God gives us and growing them to the ultimate for his glory? Navigate by values. How many people have values statements in their company? If you know you got a set of values, most companies have values. I even told you I had values. I had them hanging on the walls of our building. But I guarantee you not a single employee at that time could have told you what that value statement said. I wrote it, and I couldn't have told you what it said. See, do we really have values if we don't even know what they are? Do we really have values if they're just decorations that hang on the walls of our buildings? No, people have to see your values. People have to see it in who you are and how your company exists. If people see your values without having to read them on the wall, then you're really navigating by values. And what if we navigated by godly values? What if Jesus came to work? What might that look like? What kind of values might he show to the world around him? Well, in Galatians 5, it says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Does that sound like you at work? It doesn't sound like me at work. Very rarely would those values be coming from me at work. In fact, they never would unless I stop and say, I don't want to be led by the flesh today. I want to be led by the Spirit of God. And then those type of values, if they were seen in me that day, then I would be showing Jesus Christ to everybody that I come in contact with. We don't just say we have values because people don't believe what we say. People only believe what they see. Finally, here's what it's all about. Excel in relationships. Do you think you're in business to make money? Absolutely. Do you think you're in business to grow and to find success? Absolutely. But the real reason for business, the real reason for this whole principle of shine is to excel in relationship. The whole reason God put us here on earth is to excel in relationships. And think about it, in business, what's the most important thing you can have? Strong relationships. So are we pouring into people so that we can build relationships? Because your competitor can have a lower price, your competitor can come out with a better product, they can do all kinds of things, but what they cannot do is they cannot take away the relationships that you've established with your customers. They cannot infiltrate the relationships you have with your employees. This is the most important reason why we're in business, is to excel in relationships. This is also the most important reason why we're in life, is to excel in relationships. Because one day when we stand before the King, he's not gonna say, Chris, that $130 million year was amazing. You sold so many wood chippers, and we are right now in Florida, believe me. We're selling wood chippers like he's not gonna say that. But I think he's gonna say, what'd you do with this relationship that I put in front of you? Did you share your relationship with me when I gave you this opportunity here? It's all about relationships. I don't care what business you're in. I don't care what your job is. I don't care if you're a student, you're a stay-at-home mom, you're the CEO of a company. It's all about the relationships, because those are the things that last forever. Nothing else lasts forever. Our faith, our family, and our friends, if they know Christ, and they're all about a relationship. Speaking of relationships, this is a picture of my daughter when she was 9 years old. This is from our Christmas card in 2008. You see, the Lord had given me this vision for our company, and he had blessed it so much. And I was even doing stuff like putting Bible studies on for people and talking about Shine. And I just felt like, man, this is so great. Not only do I have a business and the Lord's provided, but I also got this going and everything's so great. Praise the Lord. And believe me, people, praising the Lord on the mountaintop is something we should all do. We should never point to ourselves. We should always point to him. But what I was about to learn is that our light is not needed the most when we're standing on top of a mountain. Our light is needed the most when we're walking through the darkest, most difficult times. A couple weeks before Christmas, she's not feeling well. My wife takes her to the doctor. She's got what everybody else has. It's just a virus. She'll be fine. Christmas, she'll be running around having a good time. By Christmas Eve morning, she's still not feeling good. She crawls into bed with me, and her hands were frozen. And being the great dad I was, I got up and put socks on her hands, so if she touched me again, it wouldn't wake me up. She couldn't get out of bed in the morning. My wife took her back to the doctor. Next thing I get a phone call. They're on their way to the hospital. Hey, I don't know what's going on, but you need to meet us at the hospital. I'm like, oh, this is weird. So I rush over to the hospital, and when I get there, that's when I found out something. A virus had indeed entered my daughter's body, but like it had done for the rest of us, just passed through when we had cold-like symptoms. This virus settled in her heart, and it's a condition called viral myocarditis, and when that happens, your body's immune system tries to attack the virus, and in essence, it attacks the heart. Her heart had been inflamed to twice the size that it should have been. She was only pumping 20% to her extremities. Cold hands on my back. She didn't have any blood coming in her fingertips. 1/3 of the people that get this can heal from it with complications. 1/3 need a heart transplant, and 1/3 die. So this was the news we're hit with on Christmas Eve. My wife and I began to pray for the greatest miracle of all times. We just prayed, let her be in the good 1/3, because we certainly didn't want her in that bad 2/3. By that evening, they were like, you know what, it's not going well. We're really gonna have to put her on a breathing tube. She's not gonna be able to continue to breathe. And that night, we witnessed something as we stood there, and they were putting her on the breathing tube. She wasn't getting oxygen, and she was growing delirious. And at one point, she screamed out, I'm gonna die. And they asked us to leave. So we stepped out of the room. They put her on the breathing tube, came back to us, said, it's worse than we thought. We also have to put her on a heart bypass machine. In essence, they put my daughter on full life support on Christmas Eve. The next morning, Christmas Day, we came in, and that's when the doctor said, there's nothing we can do for your daughter. There's no medicine, there's no procedure. We're just gonna have to hope that the body will heal itself. And at that moment of greatest angst that a parent could experience, my wife and I experienced, Robin's her name, we experienced something that we call the greatest Christmas gift ever, and it was God's peace. Because we could have freaked out when they told us that. But instead, there was just this sense of peace, and I can't explain it to you. And when we walked out of the room, I said to my wife, I go, when the doctor said there's nothing they could do, what I heard is only God can do this. And she goes, you know what I heard? She's not in the doctor's hands anymore. She's in the hands of God who created her. And my wife and I had to come to the conclusion at that moment that if the Lord was gonna take her to heaven, that it would be okay. And we knew that, and there was such peace in that. Yet we really wanted her to stay here, so we prayed and we prayed and we prayed, and anyhow, she did not get any better. But a few days later, they said, there's an experimental machine at the University of Florida. We think your daughter's a candidate for it. It's our only hope. Do you want to do it? We said, absolutely. Let's go. It felt right. We prayed about it. She went up there and got put on a machine that wasn't approved by the FDA. It was just a total experiment, and it was designed to try to keep her alive long enough to get a heart transplant. They didn't know whether it would work or not, but they put her on this machine, and we were praying for a miracle, and I used to think a miracle was one big, massive thing, like when Jesus raised a child from the dead, and that's what we were praying for, raise her from the dead, Lord. But what we needed to learn is that miracles happen every single day if we'll just open our eyes and see them, and begin to pray for simple things. Began to pray that the machine would work, began to pray that she'd come out of the coma, began to pray for little things like that. And they told us that she may not talk again because they thought she had a blood clot that would keep her from talking. So I began to pray that she would talk again. Well, long story short, these little miracles began to happen. Her organs began to heal. She began to come out of the coma. Eventually she could breathe on her own, so they took the breathing tube out, and I'm like, she's trying to talk. And they're like, no, she's not. She's got fluid in her lungs. She couldn't talk if she wanted to. But I swore she was trying to talk. And a couple days later, I heard the most amazing words. Remember the last time I heard my daughter say anything, it was, I'm gonna die. And she looked up at me in the weakest voice. She said, Daddy, I love you. Whew. Daddy, I love you. And I think for like a moment, I got a glimpse of how God must feel. When we, in our sick mess, whatever it is, something's going wrong, we still look up at him and go, God, this sucks, but I love you. Oh. I can't explain the machine to you, so I'll let this picture do it. That's her blood coming out of her body. We spent 5 months in a hospital room at the University of Florida. Every day was a battle, every step. Some days it was life and death. Some days it was just, I can't get to the bathroom. Some days it was, I'm not gonna take my medicine today. I'm gonna tell you, it was 5 months of walking through hell. But I've heard it said before, if you're walking through hell, just keep walking. And that's all we could do, so that's exactly what we did. Let me say real quick, I learned a lot, but if there's anybody in the room, and I'm sure there is, that's going through a difficult time, let me tell you the most important lessons I learned in this. It's so critical. When you're in a bad situation like this, what you're so tempted to do is ask God, why? Why is this happening to me, Lord? Why would you do this to the purest heart I know, Lord? Why? Why me? Why her? Why? If you want to ask God why, stop asking him why and ask him what he's doing. What are you up to, Lord? What are you teaching me in this? What can I learn from this? What should my next step be, Lord? Don't ask him why, ask him what. The hardest thing about spending 5 months in an intensive care unit on a machine is waiting for something you don't know whether it's gonna come, and waiting to know if when it comes, will it even work? You wanna ask God, when is this ever gonna end? When is this agony ever gonna end, God? But Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. He has a plan for you. When you want to ask him, when is this agony going to end? A better thing to do would ask him to just, Lord, work your plan. Your plan is better than my plan. And instead of me asking you when you're going to take care of this situation, I'm just going to ask you to work your plan. The other thing is when you're going through something really tough, you wake up every morning and it's real again. She's still in the hospital. I'm worried she's gonna die today. I'm worried. Whatever your situation is, when you find yourself completely in worry, there's only one thing you can do that works, and that's to take the focus off yourself and your worry and to place the focus on God, the one who can get you through this, the one who can do a miracle. When you want to worry, worship. Don't ask why, ask what. Don't ask when, ask him to work. Don't get caught up in worry when you can turn to him and worship. That's the greatest lesson I learned through going through such a low valley. And I think, I always feel like when I go somewhere, I have to share that with people because it was so important to me. On April 15, they called and they said, I think we found a heart for your daughter. And we were so excited and we didn't know what to do. And this is just before going into the operating room to take her heart out and put a new heart in. I can remember my prayer. I prayed the dad prayer. Lord, be with the surgeons, be with the heart. Just make everything go perfect. Lord, give me everything I want. Please, Lord, give me, nothing wrong with that. The Lord wants us to make known our requests. And I was making known my requests. And I was making very clear to God what my requests were. And it was time for my 9-year-old daughter to pray. And I'll never forget it. It was a short prayer. She said, Lord, thank you that you may have sent me a heart. And I pray that this heart will heal me. But I want you to know if it doesn't work out the way I want it to, I'm still gonna trust you. What? When's the last time I prayed like that? When's the last time you prayed like that? If it doesn't work out the way I want it to, I'm still gonna trust you. It worked out. It worked out. My daughter got the heart from a 15-year-old boy. There she is holding her own heart in her hand. Not many people do that. I was kind of surprised. I said, Grayson, would you like to see your heart? And she goes, yeah, I think I would. I was like, really? Hey, Grayson, would you like to hold your heart? Yeah, I think I would. Really? Hey, Grayson, what's it feel like to hold your own heart in your hand? Now I'm really leaning in. Something profound's coming. It looks like chicken to me, and gave it back to the doctor. It's what she said. I can't make this stuff up. That's exactly what she said, and I have to tell you, we've never fed her a piece of chicken that looked like that, but it's what she said. Our Christmas card from 2009, miracles do happen. If you're going through something tough, if you're at your last rope, if you're not really sure if God still does miracles, let me tell you, he still does. Believe it from someone who's lived one. Believe it, it's true. God still works miracles. Grayson is a healthy freshman at the University of Florida. She's 18 years old. Her story goes back to where her life was saved, and now she's a student at the University of Florida, which makes it really nice because now she can walk to her clinical appointments that she has every quarter instead of us having to drive her 100 miles to have them. It's so awesome how God works, and he just carries us through. When we were leaving the hospital, the doctor said, the head of cardiology, he goes, Kris, I just want to thank you. I was like, what? What would you want to possibly thank me for? You saved her life. And he goes, no, I want to thank you. We've never had a patient or a family make such a big impact on our entire floor. And I was absolutely shocked. I'm like, Doc, we didn't try to impact anybody. We don't know. We were just trusting God and taking each step along the way. We didn't try to impact anybody. And he goes, I know. We've had here the last 5 months is we've got to see faith lived out. And we don't get to see that very often. It's not what we do. It's what he does through us. I didn't do anything. I didn't impact. When God works in us, when the light of Christ shines in us, that's when he does things that impact people. And they can impact people for eternity. So now let me bring it back to business since it's time for me to close. We get to carry his light to the darkest places. Isn't it cool that he picked you and you and you and you and me to do this? We literally get to be the light of Christ to the workplace. Doesn't that get you excited? Doesn't it get you pumped up? Doesn't it give you a purpose, a reason to live, a reason to do things to the glory of God? We get to do this. In Matthew 5:14, he gathered his disciples around him and he said, you are the light of the world. You're like a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden, and you don't take a lamp and bury it under a basket. No, what do? You put it on a lampstand so that it can shine for the whole house to see. You see what he's saying there? He wasn't just talking to his disciples, he was talking to us. We are to carry his light. And you know what? We're supposed to start in our own house. We're supposed to be a lamp in our own homes. And if we are a lamp in our own homes, if we bring the light to our own homes, he will make us a light to the world. And us, he has called to do this in the workplace. One of the most difficult, darkest places that there is. The workplace is where we get to bring the light. I always close with, if I held up a light bulb, it wouldn't do much. You'd go, that's a light bulb. And there's millions of light bulbs. They all look different. But they really only all have one purpose, don't they? To get plugged in, to be put on a lampstand, to let power run through them. And when that power runs through them, what happens? They shine. They carry light. Be a lamp in your house. Be a light to the world. Let the light shine before men, that they'll see your good works and glorify our Father who is in heaven.